Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's, brought to you by Grey Duck Vodka and Legends Golf Course in Prior Lake, Minnesota, which is actually the location and host of our second annual Day 2 draft party, which we are holding on Friday from around 6. The second day of the draft starts at 6 until 10-ish or whenever people kind of want to take off after the pick in the third round, assuming the Vikings don't make a bunch of crazy trades, which is a very high possibility. But I'm Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and Purple Territory Radio.com, here with Mr. Joe Oberly, who's not fresh off another vacation, but was on vacation. Was it the week before last now, or last week? I can't sort these things out. But
I just wanted to go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say you were in Florida.
Yeah, just playing golf. No biggie. Didn't play well. Made some money. A few birdies, but that's about it. Every time you say good morning, Vikings fans, have you ever heard that guy, that announcer who they repeated on KFan every once in a while, where he, after the some team outies beat the Lady Gophers hockey team after their long streak, and he said, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Minnesota?
No, I haven't heard that.
Oh, he's just screaming it. He's literally screaming it.
Super excited?
Oh, yes, because they finally beat, they were undefeated for forever. And, good morning, good afternoon, good night, Minnesota. It's so good. God.
Wasn't it like Edward R. Murrow's thing or something like that back in the 50s?
Not quite like that, but yeah, something like that.
As the editor of Minnesota Golfer magazine and the editor of our websites as well, really quickly, since I know this isn't really our MO, I wanted your take on Tiger Woods' amazing victory in the Masters. I mean, from my perspective, as somebody who doesn't follow golf that much, it was amazing to see at the liquor store how many people. I convinced them to put up like a 60-inch TV for Sunday, since the owner's there and he doesn't want to miss football games, so we got that set up, and so it was on in the store. But people, it was like, even when it wasn't on or it was that commercial, people were coming in, what's Tiger doing? Do you hear about Tiger? He's so just transformational in regards to golf and how important he was and apparently still is.
It's huge. It's like you said, it's really good for the game. I guess that's the biggest thing, that it brings so many eyeballs back. I mean, I'm talking with my mom, who I don't think has ever picked up a golf club, and she's to make a conversation. She goes, Did you hear? You've been watching Tiger? What? from you?
Yeah.
And I know my dad used to say that the only time he would tune in was when Tiger was in contention. So
yeah.
I mean, it just, all these people who don't follow golf, but might pay attention to the headlines. All of a sudden they're plugged in, and it was fun. It was fun to see him in contention again. It was fun to see him. I had talked with. I'm in this pool and talking with Mark Craig from the Star Tribune about Tiger. He was on that golf trip with me, and we both picked him because we figured that's the only one. If he's going to win another major, it's going to be that one. He knows the course so well, and he had so much experience there, so much experience winning, that if he was in contention, he was still playing good enough that he could close somebody out, and the nerves might get to the others, and it sure enough did. It was fun. It was really fun.
And I think America loves tearing people down, but they also love a redemption story.
Absolutely.
And hearing about just what he's gone through physically, how he had to have a nerve block just to walk a year ago, how beat up he's been. A lot of it is mental, I think, just with his personality and being in control of everything, including his image, and having that all kind of stripped away, I think, affected him. But I think people downplay just how beat up he really was.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm like Tiger. I've had 5 knee surgeries and back problems. I'm just missing the 15 majors, that's all. and all those girlfriends, too. But he was. I mean, I think it's like 2 at least 2 back surgeries. I mean, the
Yep.
doctors always told me, if you can avoid back surgery at all, do it, because, once you start cutting stuff out, it's going to eliminate you. I mean, he had his back fused, and for a golfer, that's tough to overcome. And so
Yep.
what he's done physically is nothing short of amazing.
Definitely. And this is probably the best time to say this, but at the party on Friday, which, if you're listening and you want to go, it is free. There's going to be free tons of appetizers like buffalo wings, Swedish meatballs, egg rolls, meat platter. There will be a cash bar, which is sponsored by Grey Duck. You can get a lot of Grey Duck cocktails there. But the thing I'm most excited about is they're setting up these golf simulators in the room that we have, which is basically a banquet hall. So we'll have a lot of privacy, which we didn't have last year. And it seems like there's a little bit of a West Side Story-esque thing brewing between us and the KNSI Sports Radio guys out of St. Cloud who are coming, the North Star Podcast guys out of St. Cloud who are coming. I think we're going to have to really represent for PTSD Morning Joe's Vikings territory and play at least a hole of golf against them on one of those simulators where you hit the ball at the screen and then the computer kind of takes over from there. And so it might be me and you in doubles against a few different people.
Oh, my God. You can do better than me.
No. I lettered in high school in golf because golf was it was a way to get free range balls at Hiawatha. I went to Minneapolis South High School, and basically everybody on the hockey team played golf. And I'm not kidding. Every time I turned my scorecard in, the person would laugh and say, "No, really, where's your score?"
Well, I proved the old adage you don't need to know how to play golf to write about it. So, we're in trouble.
They actually would pair me up with the best golfer on the other team because I was so bad and I took so long that it would negatively affect their mood and thus their score, which is awesome. But yeah, it's been we've been away for about 2 weeks, and there's a few things I wanted to talk about before we got into some of the draft related stuff. The biggest thing that happened, obviously, was the party on Friday. I'm kidding. Was Thielen getting his contract extension, which, sometimes I get a little bit lost in the fray of the business side of the sites, and especially with the party coming up, making sure that everything's perfect and that we're actually getting people to come and that we're getting a bunch of different options of where people can buy memorabilia from different companies, so on and so forth. And so maybe that's why this surprised me so much, but I didn't expect to see this now. Obviously, Thielen was outperforming his contract like crazy, and when comparing his contract to Diggs' contract, a lot of people talked about him eventually getting that extension. I think it's obviously a great thing for the team to have him locked up through 2022 and not have that issue kind of lingering. But as we said on the show a million times, Brzezinski, he is the MVP of this team in regards to getting money to work and locking down these young core players. But I was just surprised that it happened when it did.
I would agree with you that he had made, Adam had made mention of it, or probably responded to a reporter's question about his contract, and he said, I'm not going to hold out. I'm going to, I'd like to get more money, because he's clearly underpaid when you look around the league, his production versus his paycheck, and so it was coming, and so they apparently started talking about it, did something about it, which A, shows you what they think of him, but B, I think. You mentioned Brzezinski, and I think it was also, and I don't know the numbers that well definitively, but I think it was a way for them to restructure some stuff and make some more room for him and other players. Yeah, I think so, because they deferred some money and they had to put more in bonuses and redid the contract as it was, and that probably freed them up some cap space this year and maybe next year or something. I think they gave a lot to him in bonuses right out of the gate, which allows them to free up some cap space now or later. So I think that was part of the motivation, but the other part of the motivation is he deserves it and they want him around. I mean, you and I mentioned to you this morning, Mark Craig, who's talking about him again. He had a great piece in the Tribune this morning that about Thielen and how he was almost became a Packer because the Packers took two wide receivers in the 7th round in 2013 and they had noticed him and made, Thielen went to a combine down in Houston, I believe, and made a splash, and the Packers talked to him, so he thought it might be happening with them. And then when they took 2 receivers and didn't take him, he said, well, that's pretty much it. Well, how many years later, six seasons later, he's a 2-time Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
He's,
113 receptions last year.
Exactly.
Which is amazing, not to interrupt you, but just that I wrote that down and circled it on my notes because there was a period where the Vikings offense went relatively cold. And you have to think that if that doesn't happen this year, he could, I think he was 3rd most in team history in regards to receptions. He could really do some damage.
Well, it's interesting, and part of the piece, which is something that I clued into because I'm not a big draft nick. At this time of year, I let those experts, do their thing. But it talks about the crapshoot that the game is. I mean, I think he quoted something like 23 receivers taken that year, and like 20 of them are still in the game or something like that. And
okay.
My goodness, that's amazing how much, demonstrating how much of a crapshoot it can be. I mean, and it's easy to focus on those ones that didn't work and say it's a crapshoot because there's plenty of others that do work out. But that's an amazing rags to riches story, and it shows you, for all our hand wringing about and what we're going to do in probably the second half of the show is talk about it. It's you never know what's going to happen, and it all depends on that person that you're drafting and how much they love football, how much they like to work out and get better, and that is Thielen in spades. I mean, he loves the game. He wanted to play. It's his dream, and he works at his craft every year. Whatever he doesn't do, he tries to get better at. And he's got so many skills. His measurables might not have been there completely when he was in a combine, but boy, his measurables have certainly improved since he's become a Viking.
A lot of skill players especially come into OTAs or training camp and they talk about things that they have to improve on because I think they think that sounds good and it's been coached that way from a media perspective. But you get the feeling that when Thielen does that, he really means it and that he actually does it. So right. He always points out things he can do better, and then he really seems to put in the work to do that.
We're Minnesotans. We try harder.
It's a Scandinavian thing, I think. My dad always tells the story that Minnesota was the number 1 seller of Oldsmobiles back in the day because Buicks were too fancy. And it's just that understated work ethic, I think, that has obviously worked for him. I think the other part of this that was cool, too, was Diggs' response and just the relationship that they have, which is not always the case when it comes to, especially wide receivers who have, some have mercurial personalities or they want the ball just for themselves and so on and so forth. But having those 2 guys together and I put a hashtag pick your poison for the next 4 years when I posted that article because it's just it's really exciting that looking at the guys that they have locked up for the next few years.
That is, which segues into the brick wall blitz story.
It does, which was one of the cooler things that have actually happened to our writers, the site, so on and so forth. It seems like these last couple of weeks, things have really been changing for us, and we've become more generally accepted as a resource. When we had Chad Greenway on the show, he mentioned that players are a lot more in tune to the media than they let on. They read a lot of stuff, and that they are familiar with Vikings territory and purple PTSD. And he mentioned that he used to get a lot of flack from writers on purple PTSD, which I believe was Luke Braun at the time. His final year or 2, I think Luke was kind of pointing out that he was a quote unquote liability. That having been said, though, Jonathan Kinsley, who runs the football site Brick Wall Blitz, and he writes for us periodically. When the mood strikes, he does a lot of other media-related stuff too. He wrote an article that I think is also a prime example of people reading the headline and they're not actually reading the story. It was headlined, Stephon Diggs is the league's most underrated pass catcher, and a lot of the responses were, how in the hell is he underrated? My response was read the article because that's what it's about. But Diggs actually caught wind of the article, and I don't think he necessarily. He might. Yeah, he did retweet it, and he put.
He did. He said, "Tape don't lie."
Yeah, tape don't lie, and I just like, this is so cool. Because basically it was a pretty comprehensive article, and it broke down a lot of the film, showing just what an amazing route runner he is, and how embarrassingly open he can get. And I agree, and I don't know what your take is, Joe, but I agree with the idea that he is underrated. I think that he isn't named very often when it comes to elite pass catchers. I think especially considering the season that Thielen had, he's not considered on Thielen's level by a lot of fans, for example. I would hear a lot of things like, why is Diggs getting more money than Thielen when Thielen's clearly better? So on and so forth.
Because Thielen came into the league after Diggs, and his contract wasn't up. Oh, there you go.
And it took him a while to get started. I mean, I always tell the story about me saying, okay, well, it's Thielen's peaked. Let's go with Mobo back during the 3-deep days. And
I set you straight on that one.
You know, and it's, yeah, you did, and you were right. But at the same time, as stupid as that sounds in retrospect, the Vikings wouldn't have drafted Laquan Treadwell if they knew what they had.
Right.
In Thielen. They just didn't expect it, and so that's kind of what the mindset was. Yeah. So I don't feel that bad about it. But no, just kind of what your thoughts were on the idea of him being underrated.
First, a few thoughts. First, you said we're becoming reliable. You're telling me we're becoming mainstream media? That scares the living hell out of me. I don't want to be mainstream media. But number two is these guys read these things, you know? Yeah. I mean, I think Chad Greenaway is a notorious reader of some of the stuff, or he was, at least to a certain degree, because I knew that he put together a relationship with Arif Hassan, because Arif was on his case as well way back when, and I think they've came to an agreement on things or whatever. But I think there was, so they definitely look at it, you know. And here's Stefan picking up on this, and I thought the article was really interesting because it showed, like you described, him getting open embarrassingly several times, and I always have to take these things with a grain of salt because, you know, for every 5 or 6 plays that they show on there, there's how many others where they maybe didn't do, or they didn't beat their guy, or they didn't get open. But that being said, I do have some agreement with what he's saying. It's hard to make a statement the most underrated in the league, and I would say he definitely is underrated. And that's because they have 2 very good receivers on the same team. But, you know, even more so, Joe, and you're not going to like this, but what that little piece he put together showed me is, oh, my God, Kirk Cousins, get the guy the ball.
Yeah.
You know, there was – I mean, I don't even remember that many bad misses of a wide-open Stephon Diggs, and I'm sure it happens all the time. You know, when an incomplete pass, they rarely replay it, so you don't focus on it. You go on to the next one. But there were several misses there, and you know, of course, it doesn't show exactly what kind of duress Kirk was on under the time on all of them. I guess if you really honed in on it, you could figure that out. But I don't know. Concerned me a little bit about his accuracy, even though he had a great season. But it's just more fuel for the fire of cousin haters. But that's another story.
You know, and he's supposedly known for his deep ball stuff, and it's, you know, it was a tale of two seasons, really. I felt like, especially in regards to what I said earlier about Thielen. I mean, he was threading the needle on some passes to Thielen in the first 2 games that were amazingly dangerous. I did feel like him and Diggs weren't on the same wavelength that he was with Thielen for whatever reason. And I do remember him missing Diggs a few times and thinking, man, that would have been nice. But I think to kind of put a bow on this too, a lot of people don't take into account, and you and I talked about this a lot at the beginning of the season last year, as to why teams were continuing to double or triple Diggs and letting Thielen go against single coverage or run out of the slot against the linebacker. And he was killing people, but the other teams would rather have that than Diggs' complete game-breaking ability. Mm-hmm. And I think that changed a little bit as the line kind of deteriorated. But He's just as responsible for Thielen's stats to start the season as anybody, really.
It's like you said, a pick your poison thing, and I think it's going to continue to be, and it's so exciting for the Vikings, and certainly it should be for Kirk Cousins to have those guys locked up. He doesn't have to feel like he has to feed one or the other because they need stats so they can renegotiate their deal or anything like that. He can just go out there and play football. He's got Dalvin Cook in the backfield. And then the Vikings are going to draft this Gronk-like tight end from Iowa. Yeah. Wait, sorry, a little too early. It's the weapons are there. Fix the offensive line, see what they can do, and then you can evaluate Cousins. I think very easily or very legitimately because he's got the receivers, he's got the targets, he's got the weapons. Give him the time. Let's see what he can do. And then if he is so under duress and can't get anything, or if he's not under duress and still can't get things done then you've made a mistake and you got to start moving on. But anyway, it's not a Cousins discussion. Yes, I agree that I really like Stephon and Adam together. I love their attitude. I love the fact that they got their contracts, so that doesn't even enter. They get to go out and play football, and they both love the game. They both want to their team to win, and they're both fun as heck to watch. So it's exciting for a person like me and yourself who just love to watch receivers play ball.
For sure. And hypothetically, if they were to win the Super Bowl, you would look at some of these deals as huge discounts. A lot of teams. It's hard to keep a dynasty in the free agency era of the NFL because a lot of guys tend to cash in after they win the Super Bowl or go to the Super Bowl. And so having these guys locked in like that, just with Cousins locked in for 2 more years, it is exciting. I'm getting very excited, and I always kind of preface a lot of my articles in this time of year as I forget what the term I used, but basically this used to be my favorite time of year because it was like a Madden-esque what if. They could get this guy and then this would happen. Exactly. And you have all these theories about the draft or free agency and adding those players to the team and watching Madden, like the computer play itself, used to be my favorite thing to do. That having been said, you wrote an article about the schedule that was released late last week, and a lot of people, yourself included, and then I added my thoughts to this too, we're doing kind of a soft schedule or record prediction based on the teams they're playing, where they're playing them, so on and so forth. And I think it was interesting how you did it with the different numbering system. If you want to explain
analytics,
that.
Baby.
I said who I was gonna say. Who kidnapped you in Florida? Where does this come from?
I was mostly I was a little bit tongue in cheek with the whole analytics things, but I just put grades on games and how I thought they would. What their chances, will they win? Should they win? Will they lose? Should they lose? It's pretty in-depth, deep dive there on those numbers. That's weeks and weeks of analysis, to come up with that. And I just applied them to each game and graded each one and then kind of looked at, added them up and figuring that, on some of those they should win. I had them for like 3 they should wins, and so I said one of those are going to lose because of the Vikings, and then one of those games that they shouldn't win, they will, because that's just the way the NFL is. So then coming up with a record at the end, and it kind of surprised me, because I wasn't thinking when I went into it what their record might be, and once again it's very early, they haven't even had the draft yet, but I came up with an 11-5 record for them, and. So I don't know how you wanted to go through this or if you do it all, but it was a fun exercise for me. I kind of liked it. I don't think that the analytics people or Moneyball people are going to call it my formula, but it's available for the right price. Though.
The overly algorithm.
There it is.
So the schedule as released is at home. Right, yeah, that's right. At home against Atlanta. On the road for Green Bay week 2. That's a big one. At home against the Raiders. Back-to-back road games, Chicago and the Giants, who we seem to play almost every year. At home against Philly, huge game. It's huge. I believe that. We're at home, too. On the road against Detroit. At home against the Skins, which suddenly becomes a super interesting game. I don't remember off the top of my head if that's a nationally televised game, but it should be.
It's Thursday night.
Oh, that's gonna be so good. Case Keenum and AP coming back. Then you have on the road at Kansas City, on the road in Dallas, at home against the Broncos. Then the bye week.
No, the bye week's before. It's between Denver and Seattle.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. You're right. Okay, go ahead.
No problem. I kind of wrote that and scribbled it out, so I wasn't sure. At Seattle.
Yep. Home against Detroit.
Against the Lions. At the Chargers. Home. Ooh, that's nice to finish the season. Back-to-back home games against the divisional opponents that are the Packers and the Bears. So from that, was close. I had a 12-4 record. The losses going to the first Bears game, the Chiefs game, the Seahawks game, which I was on the fence about, and the Chargers game, all road games. So I'm picking a 8-0 at-home record.
They got to have that. I had those same losses, and thinking that if they were the one that they should lose and they were going to win, if it went the opposite way, it would be the Chargers game. They would somehow surprise them because, that's a game where there's little. They've only played 12 times in the history of the team, so they know pretty much very little about each other. So I thought, that's one they could sneak away. I thought. I think I had him splitting I might have had him winning the Packers. But anyway, just to really demonstrate how dubious this exercise is at this point in the season. We don't even know. I saw something on Twitter the other day. They were showing James Jones, former Packer, going through the Packers schedule and predicting it, and he's got the Packers sweeping both the Vikings and the Bears, and he's got them as going 13-3, and these other guys over there watch, just laughing at him, and just like,
yeah. So, good luck with that, man.
Take everything with a grain of salt because everything and if you go through the story, while I legitimately believe, marking the games that I thought they would win and should win, it's a little bit tongue in cheek at this point in time. There's some kernels of truth in there. I think, against Denver, they're going to do well because they got half of their coaching staff is on the team. I did have them. I was thinking they should lose in Dallas, and I don't like that because, generally the Vikings play Dallas pretty well. Dallas a little bit better, but it's a tougher game down there. Kansas City, I think they will lose. It should be a fun season. There's a lot of games with a lot of intrigue, just Big because time. Of different players, and it'll be fun.
Can I say that I really, really dislike Phillies fans?
That's a headline. It's never been done before. I don't think you're the first person.
Fresh take. Yes. I don't remember specifically. I think it was Diggs responding to the Brickball Blitz piece, and I've seen this on our site a bunch too when we do live chats, things that have nothing to do with Philadelphia at all. And I keep seeing people showing up. They did this on the Diggs thing. They've done it in our chat room, and everyone is always like, "Can you ban this person?" And I always do. And it's the 38-7 baby with the eagle emoji, and I was like, "What are you even? Why are you here?" No one's talking about you. How did you even find this? Are you just going around to Vikings players and doing this? I don't understand that. If it was a Saints thing or a Packers thing, I could understand it, but we're not rivals. It just
I think they have that now though, Joe, because I was just going to bring up the Saints. There was a lot of those Saints fans that were doing the same thing after they first won the Super Bowl, and the Vikings fans went nuts because they got jobbed by the refs and blah 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 blah. So there was a lot of bad blood going back and forth on the interwebs, and now I think with the same thing happened with Philly. The Vikings felt like this was their year to win it in their home stadium. They got taken away, and they treated the Vikings fans out there like crap, and there's plenty of bad blood. I mean, remember they had a guy walking down the street with the sign that he wanted that old lady dead. That was so this guy obviously got into it with somebody, and he just probably doesn't want to let it go. He's got someone else to hate, And
they won though. What are they? You know what I mean?
I get it.
What are they mad about?
But then the Vikings came back and beat them the next season, So,
which is the Vikings to a T, by the way. I'm pretty
right.
sure they do that every single time. I ripped on them pretty good, and then I said, you live in a city with, a broken bell, and the only somehow found a way to ruin steak. And he was like, "Hey, idiot! I don't even live in Philadelphia." And I said, "That's worse than you aspire to? Gross." Yeah, it's just something that's really bothered me. One last quick thing that I think that transitions into the draft is the Holton Hill being suspended for PEDs. I think a lot of people thought at first it was a marijuana thing just because he was in the car with Rock Thomas and he has that history. Have you heard since what he actually did?
Not a peep. I tried to find it, and I haven't really. They haven't talked about it, and it's suspended for the first 4 games, I believe. Correct?
And that's really bad because
that hurts.
Mike Hughes is not going to be 100% when the season starts. So
right.
That's when you might need him the most. And
first pick is at cornerback, baby.
I know that's hence the segue. That's the first thing I wrote in that article. I covered that suspension, and I said, this very well could be something that gets into Zimmer's head. We know his history when it comes to taking corners, and maybe that's the justification that he'll use, which I would. Ooh, that party would be brutal on Friday.
3 tough games too, right out of the gate. Atlanta, at Green Bay versus Oakland, and then at Chicago.
Yeah, so way to go, dude. Like, this is why you weren't drafted. It's just he's fit. Why that's why I'm interested in what he took, because either that's something he's gotten away with in college and that helped him, so on and so forth. Maybe it's a placebo and he thinks it helps him. But he's like a prototypical, physically, everything that a team would be looking for, size-wise, speed-wise. Like, you don't think he would need something in that regard. But, it could mean...
if they do take a cornerback, they're going to cut him loose. That's all I can say. But I have not heard a darn thing yet. So I'm thinking they're going to stick with him and wade this out and see what they can do. Because didn't they sign him... before this happened, did they not sign? Maybe I was going to say a tender or something. I'm not sure.
No, wasn't that Mike Harris?
Maybe that. Yeah, that's what you're right. That's what it was. So
it was,
I think they'll.
He's
obviously on. Yeah, he's under contract. So for now, they're sticking with him. If they grab a corner, they might take one in the first 3 rounds, though. As a result,
as long as they're going with 2 linemen. I don't care, I guess. I didn't really cover corners in regards to my prep for the show today because as I was delving further and further into it, and this isn't obviously a huge take, but what's interesting about the pick at 18 is that, the best way to put it, I guess, is CBS Sports. I was looking at a mock draft they did today, and they used a quote that I had to double check because I hadn't heard it before from Pat Elflein, where they said that he said during his time in the NFL that he was much more comfortable playing guard than center, just because that's the majority of his playing time at Ohio State. And I was like, that can't be true. So I looked it up, and of course it is. And so you have kind of the caveat between going for a center and moving Elflein to guard, or keeping him there, getting a guard that can also play perhaps left tackle, since everyone seems to really want to be moving on from Riley Reef. And by everyone, I mean the fan base. And so I kind of broke down the players by that caveat. So either a true center, true guard, true tackle, a flex guard tackle, or a flex guard center. So, I think that it just depends on, what do you think they'll be looking for in that regard? They're relatively thin behind Riley Reef at left tackle, so I could see that. Mm-hmm. But I think that if you were to get a guy like, let me look at my notes real quick.
Cody Ford?
No, the Michael Jordan, who played.
He's a retired basketball player. What
But
are you talking about?
he's still got it. Have you seen the trailer for Space Jam 2? He would be available in the second or third round. He can play guard and center, and he replaced Elflein at center after he left, so he played next to him at guard, so you kind of would flip that dynamic a little bit, but that would help tremendously. I think Elflein is a good player, and that he would massively, improve the guard play, and then Jordan is somebody who, I think you could plug and play right away, which is what they need. He's big. He's like 6'6", 315 pounds. So that again gives you some flexibility with the first pick if you want to go with a tight end like the one that you alluded to earlier.
You ready for me?
No.
No. Okay. You're going to go on further. I guess I'll preface my comments by saying like I said, I'm not a draft Nick, so it's not important what I think the Vikings are going to do. It's more important what they do, and then I'm going to be there to report about that. That's my shtick, but that doesn't help us on the show. So I guess what I want to see is just like everybody else. I want to see two linemen drafted out of their first three picks, absolutely, positively. Yeah. I want the first one to be a lineman. They're at 18 now. It all for me and anybody else. For the Vikings, it depends on how the draft falls. And if everybody starts going nuts on these offensive linemen, which they say it's a good draft for them, and all the guys that they want in figurehead the first round talent are gone. Yeah. I could see them, taking a defensive lineman or that T.J. Hawkinson or whatever his name is from Iowa, the tight end, and then start grooming him to replace Kyle Rudolph, who's been part of trade talks and who I think they approached. There was talk in the offseason they might even have asked him to renegotiate so that they could free up some space. So there's a little uncertainty there, and I do believe they will take a tight end in this draft. There's no two ways about it at some point, and they say that's a pretty good draft for them as well. It would be nice. I mean, if you've seen that guy on tape, boy, he does look kind of Gronk-like, in his size and ability. Yeah. So I mean,
he's good.
I would not be disappointed if that happened, but they better go get linemen after that. Then and I think I would really like them to get a plug and play guy. Like you said, they need it. They need somebody in there to bolster that. I mean, they got Josh Klein out the right guard. I like the idea because I'm going to trust them that it's doable to move Riley Reef inside and then maybe take one of these tackles, left tackle. That's a scary prospect to plug in a left tackle into the NFL as a rookie and expect him to protect your quarterback. But I think isn't it Cody? Yeah,
harder position. I know, but you know what I mean.
The point is that they talk about Cody Ford. I think that's his name.
Yep.
They say he's a really good pass protector, but not so much on the run. So that's a concern. I want somebody that's going to be able to do it all. I'm open to them grabbing a center if they know they can plug and play him. Now they did with Elflein. He became the center, had a great first season, then he got hurt in the second year. So, it's something that can be done, but it'll be interesting. You go and look at all these drafts and. I've always thought it kind of silly, with all due respect to the draft next, to do multiple mock drafts. You know, I guess it makes sense because it does. You don't know how it's going to fall, and so if it falls this way, but nobody can know. So I guess I would like to see the Vikings zero in on a couple, three guys, and if they're not there, then they have their plan B, and it makes it all exciting. We'll see how it turns out, but. Gosh, I hope they get a blue chip for offensive lineman at that 18 pick. They really, really need to.
I think the good news is that outside, not really the corner has been the focus, but a replacement for Everson Griffin on the edge, and perhaps going after a D lineman. And for most mocks that I've looked at are probably the most defensive lineman heavy or outside linebacker in a 4-3 heavy drafts I've ever seen. I mean, between Quinnen Williams or Nick Bosa and like 10 other guys. A lot of the drafts I looked at, 8 of the first 10 picks were either defensive edge rushers or outside linebackers that played in a 4-3. So I think that a lot of the blue chip guys might be gone by 18 and that they won't be tempted then, which is what I think is most important, because I have faith that Everson will bounce back. I mean, he's only 29, 30 years old. It's not like he's 35 years old. He had a really rough time, and it's something that he's working on, and I think that he did come back, and that's admirable, but that's just, he wasn't in football shape, so on and so forth. So I think that it was awesome that he restructured. I think that showed that he felt obligated to. Also, in conjunction with the bar stuff, it kind of gives you this brotherhood feeling of this team and how much they love playing together. And so I do think that they won't go defensive line with the first pick, just because most of those guys will be taken. But who knows? There are a lot of super talented guys that could fall. Like you said, you don't know. There's
also talk about interior linemen that they have a need there with Sheldon Richardson gone. Yeah. But I think you've got to make a huge case in that war room, in the Vikings war room, for Zimmer to get yet another first-round defensive player. The fan base would probably boo if it was a cornerback. But they got to go offensive side of the ball. Everybody and their brother knows it. I mean, recently Paul Allen from K-Fan came out with the fact that they're off of Cody Ford and
yes.
not going to pick him. And some people didn't. I guess Sean Borman from Vikings territory tweeted that might that out, and that it might just be a smoke screen. And Dan Burrow picked it up, and and there's some truth to that. It's a great tweet, because Allen's on the inside, PA's on the inside a little bit. I don't think they give him everything because they can't, they don't want to, but maybe even they give him the wrong thing, like Rick Spielman loves to do, is put that smoke screen up there and then do something else. So
Kevin Feige, the guy that runs Marvel, the movies, always puts out fake news and fake movie previews with footage not even in the movie, because they don't want people to know what the hell's going on. It's similar that way.
Social media, they have to put out fake news to keep people off the trail. If you want them off the trail, you can't fly under the radar anymore.
But anyway, at the same time, people thought maybe Zimmer was doing that with Johnny Manziel a couple years ago, because he was saying, the news was that they interviewed him and immediately were like no, and that ended up being true. So you never know.
You never know. It is. There's so many conflicting reports, and so many people like to throw stuff up there and just see if it sticks. And like I said, let me retract a little bit. I mean, I understand why people do different mocks, and I think it's a fine thing, keeps us in business and that kind of thing. I always feel like get your isn't if we have an idea what they think we do, isn't that enough? But whatever. I think anything can happen. Yeah. Anything can happen in this first round, and
that's part of the fun, like watching the first round of the draft. You'll see, well, he's not doing it anymore, but like Mike Mayock will be like, 100% sure they're gonna take player X, and then the pick comes, and then he just goes on to the next guy, not admitting how horribly wrong that he just was. Which is what I said with my schedule release. I said, it can't hold me to this because it's so far out in the season, but if I'm right, I'll take credit for it. Exactly, absolutely. Everybody else. I feel like, too, in regards to the history of this team and the ability to develop talent, that they've had a lot more success developing late-round defensive talent than they have on the other side of the ball, namely in regards to the offensive line. There have been a lot of we've both harped on this, me probably more than anything else, the fact that they didn't take a player, an offensive lineman before the fourth round from 2012 to 2017, but they did take a lot of late round guys, and they weren't hitting at the same rate that they might with somebody like Holton Hill or Stephen Weatherly or whoever. And so, I mean, that just makes sense based on how this team is constructed and who's in charge. But I feel like the odds are better to take a plug-and-play guy on the offensive side of the ball and pick up a defensive tackle or defensive end later. And, I mean, look at Everson Griffin. What was he, a 4th-round pick?
I think he was 3rd.
Was he? Yeah, that might be right. He was around 100. And so there was a few guys I liked. I did put Cody Ford pretty much near the top of my list, but seeing Sean's tweet, I kind of took him out of that. He's a first-round guy.
I'd like to see Jonah Williams is the guy that's kind of looking at. Would like to see him grab, but he might be gone. A lot of people have said that he could be available, and it's whether or not the Vikings will pull the trigger. But
do you feel like at 18, taking a center like a guy like Garrett Bradbury is a reach?
I don't know. It's hard to, he's a late 1st-round talent in one of the mocks I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And if that's the guy you want, if that's how you want to build your offensive line around and make your adjustments from there, I say go for it. But I think there's a lot. I guess I'm of two minds here. I like the fact that they're flexible and they're thinking about, they've always tried to get people that have position flexibility, which is good. But by the same token, you're asking players to take on a new position, and there's always got to be some growth in that. That it doesn't just. You can't just plug and play all of them. If you switch everybody, look what happened to Remmers last year. I mean,
T.J. Clemmings.
Exactly. Would we see the same thing with Riley Reef if he moves to guard? I don't know.
I would. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to. I would put, if I was betting, the comfort level of moving Elflein to guard versus Riley Reef is night and day. Just because I don't think Riley Reef has played guard. At least not at a pro level, either as Elflein, but he's played on a pro-style offense at Ohio State. And so, I don't know.
I'd agree with that, but maybe what the idea is, if you get the left tackle of your future is there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You take him, and then you do move him inside, and you don't, grab that center. You say, Elflein, you got to play center. We got Josh Klein at right guard, and, we got Riley Reef at the left, and Brian O'Neill, and then you're looking a little better. I think maybe that all comes from, we don't know what's going to happen, and so you've got to be able, maybe they've got contingency plans if so-and-so is there for them. If it's the player they're looking for, it's a left guard that they can't miss on, then they grab him at 18. If they lose all of them, then they maybe trade down and get Bradbury, and get another pick early in the 2nd round or something like that.
I love that. I've been talking to people. I've turned into like that lonely Social Security wage earner at the gas station who, talks for 20 minutes because they have no one else to talk to. I'm basically doing that in regards to football with people at the liquor store. And one of the big things I've been on the fence about is I do think at 18 taking somebody like Bradbury who is ranked high, but he's also a converted tight end. He hasn't been playing the position for very long, but that seemed to work out with Brian O'Neill. I do think they could trade down a few spots and still get him, but if they do that, they might be showing their hand, and you don't know what happens there. I feel like last year they attempted to take Hughes, and they thought that there was like 3 or 4 really good guards that were still available, and I think they thought they could grab one of them in the 2nd round, and that didn't end up happening. And those guards were good. I think they all basically performed really well, played right away for their respective teams. So I don't, part of me says I don't want to get too cute. Just take the guy you want and let's do this, But at the same time, if you can add a pick or two to the 8 picks they already have, it's tempting.
Well, it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. I mean, if no matter what they're going to do, they're going to get criticized and they're going to get praised. It's just the way it is. I mean, part of me is get the guy you want too, but I hate reaching and then that guy's career is filled with everybody's looking at him with hindsight.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's why there are 500 mock drafts and people do more than one, and it's why there's excitement for this every time of year, and it is exciting on draft night. There's nothing like that first round. It's funny that just how they've moved just one pick to that first night, and it shows you how much drama there is involved in that first round. But you can have 5 guys that don't even make their teams. I mean, once again, Craig's piece talks about some real blow-ups. Troy Williamson is one we're familiar with at number 7. Didn't last in the league. That happens. It happens all over the place, and it comes down to you've heard Zimmer say this and Spielman say this. We're looking for a certain kind of guy, and Adam Thielen is certainly that guy. Someone who loves the game, wants to play, wants to get better. Stephon Diggs is that guy. That guy's always working on something too. They're both very diligent and competitive, and for the right reasons. And I
would argue that's the most important trait that a football player can have.
Measuring their heart.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you do that because people are going to pretend that they have that. But you look at like a guy like Jamarcus Russell who didn't have that but had all the talent in the world. You put that drive into him and he could have been a Hall of Fame guy. It's a very I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that is probably the most important aspect of all of this.
Yeah, they have those interviews at the combine and stuff, and they try to get an idea and bring them in for the top 30 or 40 or whatever they do. And I think there's a lot of value in that, where you try to get an idea of who this is. It's interesting that Thielen could have been a dentist, but at somewhere
like Gary Quazzo.
Yeah, or a dentist salesman anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a crapshoot, but if you can determine that from people, when you see that, that's something you want to latch onto. If you got guys out there, some people can grind too much. I mean, that was the criticism you have of Laquan Treadwell, who just kept doing the judge machine over and over and over again, and he wasn't figuring out. He might have the work ethic, but he doesn't have the
Cordero Patterson running those hills in lieu of working with Michael Irvin.
There's another example.
He didn't need to
example.
increase his physicality. That wasn't the problem.
Yeah, and so you wonder how long he'll last in New England. But they've I think they turned his head out there and got it screwed on straight, and were able to get something out of it, the immense natural ability there is. That's the key. And boy, I tell you, I think I like Brian O'Neill, his attitude. I like Pat Elflein's attitude. I don't know anything about Josh Klein. I'm not sure about Riley Reif. He came in here never being injured and has been injured ever since, which is about prime for the course. But the Vikings,
gotta worry about Klein too, because that's his thing. He's on like a four year season streak.
Yeah, nice. The key is they've got to load up with these guys. They've got to. They've got other holes to fill. I mean, the defensive line needs a couple holes. There's an inside linebacker depth they need, and suddenly with Hughes, on the mend, and Holton Hill on the juice, it's a problem there too. So
what's interesting in looking at the notes that I took, and I grabbed a lot of these from different mock drafts, recent ones, but also from WalterFootball.com, and then I kind of cross-referenced that with Mock Draftables just to get some idea of the physicality of these guys. And I wrote in marker where they were going to be taken. So this is just guards or centers, but mostly guards. So this is like from their top 10 to top 15 guys, and I have, let's see here, Cody Ford, first-round pick. Michael Jordan, 2nd to 3rd. Max Schalping from Northern Illinois, 3rd to 4th rounder. Michael Dieter from Wisconsin, who I like a lot, is a 3rd to 4th round pick.
Big Ten.
Yeah, there you go. Connor McGovern, 3 to 5. Nate Davis, 3 to 5. So on and so forth. I mean, Ryan Bates, 3 to 5. Ross Pierschbacher, 4 to 6. So you don't need to reach for some of these guys. They're going to be available, and the question then becomes, do they go for the defensive lineman? I don't think they will. Maybe they will, though. I mean, they need help at linebacker. I was more focusing on the offensive side of the ball just because that's kind of where my passion lies. And so just really quickly, there's a few guys that I liked. The top running back that I liked that I thought they could get in third day of the draft, Saturday, is the running back from Nebraska, who's Ozigbo. He's supposed to be relatively similar in size and skill to Latavius Murray. And I do feel like there's another Nebraska running back that's kind of the RB2 right now.
CBS agrees with you. That's what they have him in the 6th round as well.
Okay. So going to the Vikings or just in general?
Yeah, going to the Vikings.
Yeah, I think he would be awesome.
Big Ten.
I know. Guess who my number one wide receiver is?
I don't know, but I think he plays for the Big Ten.
Yeah, Paris Campbell, Ohio State. He's really fast, but he's got a little bit of Troy Williamson syndrome. I think people worry about his hands. But he scored in the top above 95 percentile compared to other wide receivers in the draft in broad jump, vertical jump, 40-yard dash, and one more thing that I can't seem to read: 90 receptions, over 1,000 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns, 12-yard average. He's 6'1", 208 pounds. The last question I'll ask you is,
what's his catch average?
Average 11.8.
No, not how much he. How often he catches his targets, because you said he has a problem with his hands. That would be a concern for me.
Big time.
But anyway, go ahead.
Well, the debate is whether you, and I will say from the front that I am on the former side of this argument, whether you think the Vikings should go for a just down-the-field speedster that's a little bit bigger than, whose name's escaping me right now, the guy who only caught touchdowns for the Vikings last year, the little guy.
Oh, Eldrick Robinson.
Yeah, a guy like that, but bigger. Or if you go for a guy like Andy Isabella, who's from UMass, I think he had the fastest 40 in the entire draft, or he tied for the fastest 40. It was interesting because they initially said he ran like a 4.6, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" And they had to readjust it. I guess he ran a 4.31. He's been training with Randy Moss. And he had 1,700 yards receiving last year. They could get him Friday or Saturday, but he's more of a slot guy, and so you got to wonder, Thielen does exactly. Yeah. Thielen does a lot of his damage in the slot, so do you really want to, risk that for an unknown? I don't think so. I think you can get somebody else, but like a Paris Campbell, you can get it on Friday. So, it just depends on that. Tight end, we're up against the clock, but I have a lot of tight end thoughts as well. We'll really just kind of cover that next week when we break down everything.
If they go for a receiver before the 6th round, I'm going to be ticked off. That's all I'm going to say.
Really? I don't think they need to. I mean, we didn't really cover They picked up what's his face, Jordan Taylor. Am I right on that? From the Broncos. I think
so, yeah.
Who's
yes, they did.
Well known in the Kubiak system, and it's amazing how much power Kubiak has when he's not officially the offensive coordinator, but he seems to be running the show. So maybe that isn't a need, and I know a lot of these national sites don't really have their finger on the pulse of exactly what's going on. But we'll see. It'll be exciting. You'll be at TCO, I assume.
Thursday, yeah.
Even though the party's at US Bank Stadium. So, that's kind of weird.
Well, that's where the media interviews the coaches and stuff out at TCO.
I guess I've never been. I thought that they used to do like where the coaches were kind of at the party, but
they did that a long time ago. They did that a long time ago, but they've changed that since. And certainly now with TCO and the US Bank, they can get more people in the stadium and they get the big screen. And they might have. I think that's where Paul Allen leads the whole deal. But back at TCO, they trot out Spielman, they trot out Zimmer, and then they'll they'll get the pick on the phone for all the media, and so they do that in the media center.
Wow. So stay tuned to the sites. I would highly suggest people follow you, Mr. Oberly, on Twitter. I think your handle is @JoeOberly.
Yep.
And there'll be some coverage there. I do believe Sean Borman will be in attendance as well. I would also suggest that people never buy birds. Yikes. But yeah, I really hope that anybody listening would be open to coming to our party on Friday. Again, it's free. We're gonna have 3 screens running the draft. I think there'll be a few different people doing their podcasts. It sounds like the KNSI guys might, so I might be going around like a celebrity at like a radio event, hopping on each show. And so you're listening to KNSI. This is Joe Johnson. So that should be fun. But yeah, free appetizers, a cash bar courtesy of Grey Duck Vodka. Simulated golf, a lot of cool stuff you can either win through a silent auction. We'll be doing a raffle. I ordered a ton of stuff yesterday. And also, there will be a few different vendors that have some cool stuff like Skull and Bones, which is a Vikings fan company that creates these like Galler horns that you can drink out of.
Nice.
They're really, really cool, and so they'll be there. So yeah, just stay tuned. Go to our Facebook if you want to RSVP. Please let us know how many people are going to be in your party. We have room for about 120, and I want to make sure that we don't overdo it. But right now, I think
Joe,
we're all right. Yeah.
Those birds are just your way of reinforcing. Follow me on Twitter. Those are your Twitter birds. So
I thought you were going to say they were Philadelphia Eagles fans chirping at me.
No, you need a sponsorship. Get Twitter to sponsor the show.
Yeah, subtle. It's subconscious advertising, the best kind.
That's right.
But yeah, we will be back next Tuesday. Keep an eye out. Friday, I'm probably or definitely going to be doing a lot of video stuff on our Periscope. So go to @PurplePTSD on Twitter or @Viking Territory, and you'll kind of be able to follow along with the thoughts that we have on the first day of the draft, the second day, the third day. I do believe on Thursday as well, we're going to be doing a live chat on both sites, so you can come and talk to some of the writers and chat with us. So check that out as well. Obviously, there's just a lot cooking. Man, this is, like I said, blowing up. But thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back, like I said, next Tuesday. And let's hope to God things go well this weekend. This has been Morning Joe's. Skol.